Hey, this is Jack and Clayton, and this video is 3 types of emotionally unavailable men. Hey, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, I'd love just to invite you to click that subscribe button and then tap the bell notification so you hear of new videos as soon as they come out. And also, if you've listened to any stuff that Clayton and I have done before, we want to spend more time with you. We have a free webinar. It's completely free. It's 90 minutes. You can just click the link below this video, find a time that works for you in your time zone, and it's some of the best teaching material that we put out. We'd be honored to have you there. So, let's talk about emotionally unavailable men.
Yeah.
So, before we just get into the archetypes, what are some of the dimensions that we might be looking for when we talk about emotionally unavailable men? What does that really mean in terms of like their availability for commitment or their availability for connection?
Yeah, this is something we're talking about off camera, and it's, I think it's a really important thing to distinguish, which is essentially we have the vector of commitment, and then we have the vector of connection.
Yes.
Right? And we might have high connection, low commitment, and we might have high commitment, low connection. We might have low both of these.
Totally.
Low connection, low commitment.
Yep.
Or ideally, high connection, high commitment.
Right.
And I think arguably, if we're not high connection, high commitment, you're going to fall into one of these 3 archetypes that we're about to distinguish.
Awesome. So keep that kind of animating dynamic in mind as we go into this. So the first archetype is what we call just the classic emotionally unavailable guy. And this guy is basically low connection, low commitment. Well, what that means is he doesn't really want to connect very deeply with you. He doesn't really want to be available for your process, for your problems. He doesn't really want to feel obligated to you or like there's mutual obligations that you're showing up for. So there's kind of a surface level of connection. Maybe you have some fun dates, maybe you enjoy each other's company, but he's not really there to kind of dive deeply into the connected life with you.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he's definitely really not available to be committed. He's not trying to make you his girlfriend, or he's certainly not trying to make you his partner or his wife. And you might find him a little bit commitment phobic. So this is a low connection, low commitment guy.
This is the most obvious, right? I mean, this right here, you've probably seen this. You've probably experienced this over and over again with different men. And it's pretty obvious what to do here. Sometimes it can still cause a lot of pain because maybe you're falling in love with the fantasy of who he could become if he just cracked open his heart.
Right.
But I think where a lot of people experience the pain is when suddenly we start to see higher levels of one of these others.
Because it's a little bit more confusing, right?
Yes.
This guy is not that confusing. Objectively, most people would say, you know what, this guy he's not really husband material.
Yeah.
He's not really making an effort. But let's go into the second archetype. Do you want to take us into that?
Yeah, and so this one's called the emotionally available, unavailable guy. And so if we're looking at these 2 vectors, connection is up, but commitment is down. So what does that look like in real life? Well, it means that he's willing to dive deep with you. He's willing to experience and be vulnerable with his emotions. He maybe can even hold space for your emotional experience as well. You feel like you can unfold with him and different parts of your personality can come out. And the feelings that are generated and the experience you have is absolutely real. There's no refuting that. And that's where it can get so confusing.
Totally.
Because we think, well, because I have this deep emotional connection with him, shouldn't that translate to a commitment?
Right, because it probably would in a lot of the feminine world.
Yes,
right? But not necessarily.
That's the difference between men and women.
Right,
really good point.
Is that actually intimacy doesn't necessarily beget commitment
for a guy.
For a guy.
Yeah, totally. Right.
So we want to be on the lookout for both those things. Yeah. I just want to give a quick backstory to this. So I was shooting a video several months ago on a similar topic, and I kind of spontaneously at the end of the video came up with this thing because I realized, I had in the past been an emotionally available yet unavailable guy. Emotionally available, connected, emotionally literate, probably able to go into some territories that maybe a bunch of guys that you've been related to actually can't go into with you, can't be more heart connected with you, but yet not even realizing myself, I'm not actually available for commitment.
Yeah.
And I was confusing therefore, and sometimes I could break hearts, and I kind of apologize about that, but I'm leaving this concept here for you now because it's such an important one that will confuse and blindside you if you haven't paid attention to it.
Totally. It's really confusing too. As you're talking, what's coming to me is when I've worked with women, they'll say all these different things like, we have such a great time together. Our senses of humor are so much overlap.
Yes.
He's there for me emotionally in all these different ways. But the thing that actually matters into getting into a monogamous committed relationship is the commitment is just not there. It's not at all. So if you don't have the commitment as a top value of what you're using to select a partner, you can end up getting into these situations where you're hanging around with guys that you connect with deeply, but they don't ever have any intentions of taking it further.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we want to get into the third archetype. Okay, so this one, we're calling this one the heartless husband. And this one is confusing in the opposite direction. So this, paradoxically, is a guy who is low connection, but high commitment. So he's willing to make you his partner. He might be willing to get married with you. But there's sort of a sense that he's not doing that because he's actually really connected to you, really connected to your heart, that you have a rich emotional life. He's doing it kind of because he wants to be partnered and married, almost like maybe it's part of his dream board or he's checking it off his list. It's almost a little bit impersonal to who you are. It's more like he wants a wife and you fit, rather than, wow, what we have here is something that's really alive and special and connected.
It's almost as if he is not looking at the connection saying, wow, this is so precious, I want to protect it with a commitment.
Yes.
He's just like, you know what, let's just throw the commitment up there because I know that this is what you want and this is what I should be doing. And now that I've got this part of my life handled, I can focus on these other things that are more important than growing this relationship with you.
That's a good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this kind of guy might be one that you have other people reflecting to you, like, oh, you've kind of got it made. Maybe you have a white picket fence house together and you're raising a family and he's got a great job and he provides and he never causes you any real problems.
Yeah.
But you don't actually get the positive upside. You don't really have positive emotional connection with him. And you might recognize this because you may be creating negative emotional connection with him, because at some point you're kind of feeling a bit empty and you want some aliveness. So maybe you create problems, maybe you blow things up, maybe you're being a bit dramatic because actually there's not an emotional aliveness in your relationship.
It's what kids do, which is really fascinating, right? If a kid is not getting positive reinforcement from their parent, they will create a way to get negative reinforcement from their parent by misbehaving, because at least they are getting some type of connection then. So you find that kind of dynamic in your relationship. I mean, I see this happen with women and men where it's like the connection's missing, so you do anything you can to kickstart it.
Right.
Anything short of blowing it up, and sometimes even blowing it up to see, like, does this person even care about me? Do you even care if I walked away and walked out of your life? Those are some of the phenomena that we see happen in relationships.
Totally. And in this instance, he probably would care, but it might be less because he's going to really miss the preciousness of the connection.
Right.
He might care because, he doesn't want to be...
It's going to make him look bad.
Yeah, he doesn't want to lose his marriage, or he doesn't want to lose the role that you have in his life. Now, we want to make an invitation to you, if this is true for you, which is to not give up on the connection, is to actually do the maximum that you can do to see if it's possible to bring the connection up in your relationship. And our invitation really is for you to explore your own emotional vulnerability in the relationship, which might be difficult if you don't feel like he's really heart open. But that normally for most guys is the portal, right?
Yeah.
Your own emotional vulnerability is the gateway into their own emotional experience in life.
Because what I hear you saying is it's not that he doesn't want to be emotionally connected. It could be that he actually doesn't know how to get into that pose. So I mean, if we were using yoga as like a metaphor, he might not know how to put his body in that position, his emotional body in that position. And there's a certain level of leadership that you can bring as a woman, because most likely you're more flexible in the realm of emotions.
Right.
To bring that kind of leadership into the relationship, let him know what it is that you're wanting, without blaming him, without shaming him.
Yes.
Without becoming, to your point, emotionally reactive.
Right.
But rather revealing.
Yes, that's an important distinction.
Which I think is what we talk about in our webinar when we talk about feminine vulnerability, the power of feminine vulnerability.
Yeah, if you want to know more about feminine vulnerability, I really want to encourage you to click the button below this video. Join us on the webinar, find a time that works for you. Really, this is our introductory teaching, that if you want to find a guy that is high connection, high commitment, right? AKA what Clayton's calling a high quality guy, this is the portal. And really the portal is actually about work that you can do on your side of the fence to be more authentic, more real, and more vulnerable, and trust that from that place you can attract the right guy. And whether you believe us or not, I want you to click that link and find out if this could be true for you. Find a time in your time zone. We'll see you on the webinar, and thanks so much for being with us on this video.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Cheers.
Take care.
Thanks.